I met my wife during my college years. She was a student and I was a teacher, with a 7-year age gap between us. It may have seemed silly, but youth and passion had their own rules. We had grand plans, a big family and a spacious apartment. However, these dreams required significant investments, which our salaries at the time couldn't afford. I had to give up teaching for a more financially rewarding job. I was convinced that the lack of attention I gave my wife during that time would be compensated once we were on our feet. After 4 years, we finally achieved financial stability. We no longer had to borrow money from friends and managed to save for a down payment on a home loan. I also received a promotion at a job I wasn't fond of, but it allowed us to have more free time together. As spring arrived, we began exploring the city center, going for walks, dining at local restaurants, and spending time by the waterfront. Our life was gradually improving. However, by summer, I received another promotion, which meant that my phone was constantly ringing. Missing a call felt like a death sentence. Understandably, Olia was not pleased. We had several arguments about why I should stay in my current job, citing reasons such as salary and career growth. Quitting now would mean giving up on our future plans. Eventually, my wife came to accept this reality. Failed romantic evenings turned into precious gifts like gold rings or pendants, and it seemed to somehow satisfy both of us. Meanwhile, my wife found solace in a new hobby: music. She bought an expensive guitar and started taking lessons. I could only smile at her enthusiasm. As they say, different strokes for different folks. For our wedding anniversary at the end of the summer, we decided to celebrate just the two of us. We booked a luxurious hotel room with a breathtaking view, dined at an upscale restaurant, and enjoyed live music. The plan felt so real and promising in my mind. The evening was going smoothly with good wine and a delicious dinner. Music filled the air as a young man masterfully played old hits on the guitar, giving them a fresh twist. Suddenly, Olia became pale and suggested that we go up to the room or leave altogether. Just then, my work phone rang, forcing me to step aside to take the call without the interference of the music. As I made my way to a quieter spot, the music abruptly stopped as a studio recording took its place. To my surprise, the musician stepped off the stage and ended up right next to our table. He greeted my wife enthusiastically, capturing my attention. As he approached closer, he embraced her in a rather unfriendly manner, and from a distance, it even looked like he kissed her. Hurrying back, I ended the call along the way. "I'm so glad you came today," the musician said as he casually sat down in my seat and gently tucked a strand of my wife's hair behind her ear. My mind raced, trying to comprehend what was happening. I didn't want to believe the obvious, but it seemed unlikely that my eyes had deceived me. At that moment, Nikolai, the young man, jumped up from his seat and extended his hand for a handshake. Instinctively, I shook his hand. "Olia has told me so much about you. You're a very generous man, and your apartment is lovely," Nikolai said, gesturing towards my wife. She blushed and her eyes widened with a startled expression. "What?" was all I could manage to say. "I mean, your apartment is beautiful. It's wonderful that you let your sister use it," Nikolai continued, settling in the seat I had vacated and leaning in to speak to my wife. I scrutinized him closely. He seemed either mistaken or heavily intoxicated. "Olia and I are grateful for the opportunity to stay in your apartment rent-free. I know we're essentially taking away your potential income by occupying it for so long, but I promise it will be over soon," he rambled on, and tears welled up in Olia's eyes. As the absurdity of the situation sank in, I could feel a mix of anger and disbelief. "Are you sleeping with my wife?" I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. The young man looked at me with genuine sadness and attempted to embrace Olia, but she forcefully pushed him away. "Get lost," she seethed, her anger palpable. Frustrated and overwhelmed, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. But the anger still lingered within me. In a moment of frustration, I reached out and shook the musician lightly. Words failed to escape my throat as I realized that the young man was simply naive and foolish. I turned to gaze at my wife, searching for answers. "What do you want?" 4 years of devotion not enough? I asked, my voice filled with hurt. Her response crushed me. You don't need to come home. I'll take your belongings to your parents. Without looking back, I left, leaving my things in Olia's care as she had promised. It was in that moment that I discovered my mother-in-law had been supporting us financially all along, with the money my wife had been giving to her beggar lover. It was a harsh realization. I paid for a rented apartment for the couple, while my mother-in-law facilitated their comfortable lifestyle. It made me question why I worked so hard when there were enough fools like me in the world. After a month of silence, I decided to file for divorce. It was our first meeting since that fateful evening, and to my surprise, Olia refused to sign the papers. The threat of court loomed over us. I had to confront my almost ex-wife in the hallway, only to discover that she had left the musician. He had squandered all his earnings on his vices, leaving them with a bleak future. It was not worth it. I'm sorry, let's start over. It wasn't even a question. The confident ex gazed at me with unwavering certainty. In response, I grimaced and attempted to retreat into the office to proceed with my divorce. However, Olia grabbed onto the sleeves of my jacket. Ilya, the judge will take half of everything from you. Half of what? Thanks to you, I have nothing. Let's have a trial. We'll split the gold I gave you, I calmly retorted. She recoiled from me as if I were a leper. Ultimately, we divorced. I promptly quit my despised job and returned to my lifelong passion of teaching, which brought me immense satisfaction. Despite the modest income, it was an honest living. Meanwhile, Olia's life became entangled with her musician once again. I witnessed them on the streets with a guitar, alcohol, and a hat to collect money from strangers. I even tossed a coin into that hat once. It was my way of settling my past life, so to speak.